Um, so I want to change tack a bit on in the discussion and look more at the social side of things. So I think it's very interesting to get an idea of the history as you've been laying out for us, and just your sort of bird's eye view of the project. But I've always been quite interested in the social side of open source and of QGIS in particular, and so. Um, I wondered, actually, I was just joking about organized chaos, but that was really my first question was, is building a project like QGIS really just organized chaos, and how does the social aspect of the project play out? Is it a workable system to have kind of a free-for-all development model, or do you sometimes wish there was a manager in a suit with a top-down list of specs that he was feeding his group of developers?
Well, yeah, it's open source, and people come, developers come, contributors come to open source because uh, typically they either have an itch to scratch or they have a real need for features and they want to work on a project. Some of these folks come, they implement what they need or want, and they disappear, and we've got several of those that have been on the project. Others are there for the long haul. Some people are working on it because their employer uses the software and allows them to contribute because they get a benefit from that as an organization. um, you can't, I don't see in those situations how you can be a semi-belligerent dictator and manage the project that way. um, some projects do operate that way to an extent. uh, I think we've done pretty well with the chaos approach. I have a pretty from the beginning I had a pretty hands-off approach. I had some definite ideas of what I wanted, but when people are contributing, I think you have to just let them, you know, follow their direction, and maybe, collectively as a community make course corrections along the way. So it sort of works. There are times when the chaos approach can be a bit disruptive,
Is chaos
particularly
probably
when a
probably a bit of
major
a strong word, isn't it? I mean, yeah, is it really
yeah,
chaos?
yeah, I wouldn't call it chaos. It's, I'm not sure what the right adjective would be, but at times, someone may decide, oh, this would be really cool to have, and they implement it. Well, perhaps some discussion would have been good ahead of time. We've had a few of those instances, nothing major, and nothing that's caused, huge dissension, at least that I'm aware of
Mhm.
in the ranks. And so I think if you let people follow their passion, they'll do good things. And you just need to, uh, as a leader of the project, as a release manager, any of the folks involved in the leadership need to allow people to follow their passion, but also attempt to steer things in a way that gets where we want to be.
Mhm. Mhm. So, one of the interesting things I find about the Quantum GIS project is that actually, as a community of users and developers, people are actually quite nice to each other. I don't know how, I was trying to find a fancy way to say it, but if you read online about, for example, the Linux project, the Linux kernel project, or various other projects, they're often typified by flame wars and wildly dissenting opinions and people running amok. But somehow we have landed up in QGIS with a community which is really not like that at all. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about what the magic trick was to actually building such a community.
I really don't have an answer for that. We've had really good people, and we've had, disagreement, of course, but they've been worked out in an agreeable way, in a considerate way. No flame wars. The only real nasty interchanges we've had have been from people that really don't contribute to the project, download it, run it for 5 minutes, and get on an email list and start denigrating the project, and so we've had a few of those things. But I don't know what the secret is. I don't. Maybe GIS types are just kinder, gentler people. I don't know.
So,
Certainly nothing that I did in the course of the project.
so you're the chairman of the project steering committee, and I thought it might be just interesting to get you to explain how QGIS the project is actually organized, because maybe a lot of people are not aware that there is actually some organization behind the project. Could you just sort of outline how it's all put together?
Well, we have a project steering committee with 5 members. I'm the chair, which sometimes amounts to nothing more than a figurehead. We have the release manager, which does all the work in terms of coordinating the releases, and that would be you, of course. And then we have a financial director, and a technical lead, and a community or I think that's the term we use, community lead, to manage the public face of QGIS, documentation, websites, and so forth. So we made those formal positions and put somebody in the leadership to manage those things, so that we would have some focus on those issues rather than people just hit or miss trying to address things. And I think that's worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And underneath it, there's further organization beyond the steering committee as well. Maybe you could just sort of explain how that works.
There's a lot of people working on different committees and aspects. I guess that's what you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, I'm not even in tune with everybody that's involved in working on things. I just know that it works.
So sort of more also on the, I love the mug, by the way. Also on the sort of social side, it's quite interesting for me what attracts people to the project, and I often hear people saying, I'm not a programmer and I wish I was because I could help out. And what are your thoughts on this kind of sentiment? Is there a place in QGIS land for non-programmers and non-geeks?
Oh, most definitely. In fact, we've got a lot of people that are not programmers working, and without them, we wouldn't have a lot of aspects that we do have. We have people that do documentation. You don't need to be a programmer to do documentation. We have translators, and I've lost count of how many languages we currently support. You probably know, but last I heard it was in the mid 20s, I think. Mm-hmm. We have people with artistic talents, designing icons. There's all kinds of ways you can contribute to the project without writing code, and in fact, those are the areas that developers typically neglect, because they like to write code, they don't like to write documentation. Mm-hmm. And so there's plenty of opportunity, and I believe our website lists some of the ways in which a person can contribute. You don't have to be a developer, and we welcome those kind of people.
So when you started QGIS and you decide to open source it, you put all the source code out in the public domain, and for a lot of developers, writing software is kind of a personal process. You put silly comments in there, you maybe make kludges and kludges as you'd say in the US, I guess, and maybe take shortcuts and do things that you probably, it's like putting your dirty laundry out there a bit, isn't it? You often do things that you wouldn't like people to see. Did the idea of putting QGIS out there give you some pause for thought in these lines, or what sort of words of encouragement or advice would you have for somebody who's sort of teetering on the edge of contributing some good work to us, but worried about how they might look bad, because of their coding practices or what have you?
I say get over it. No, actually, I had a lot of trepidation in putting my first code out there because of that reason. You know, I'm not a trained C++ programmer. My background is in sciences, and so of course I had some, as I said, trepidation in throwing that out there for criticism. But you know, since then, after that initial uh, disclosure, I've taken on a little bit of a different approach to things, and that is I give somebody something to shoot at, and they'll make it better. There's been more than one occasion in the project where someone would say, I wish we had this feature. And so I would sit down and implement it very basically, throw it out there, and people say, oh, well, that works, but you know, this is kind of ugly, or this, you know, this could work better this way, and they take it and run with it and make it better. So my advice is don't worry about it. You know, we all write crummy code. I don't think there's a programmer out there that would if they were honest with themselves, wouldn't admit that, yeah, I write some ugly code sometimes. That's not the point. You know, the point is to get the features in there, the functionality in there, and you know, plenty of other people are going to look at it, and the worst that has happened is they'll make what you did better. But without your contribution, that feature or what have you may not have ever popped up.
Mm-hmm. So with so many users out there now using QGIS and team members participating in the project and so on, you must have, over the 10 years that have passed, you must have come across some interesting cases where QGIS has been used in the wild. Have you got any interesting anecdotes to share about how you've seen QGIS put into practice?
I can't think of a specific instance offhand. I keep getting surprised by where people are using it in different situations. Back in 2007 at the FOSS4G conference, I put together a slide that showed I was able to track what people were using it for, what their discipline was, or what they were actually using it for. And I think that was back when you had to actually tell me in order to get subscribed to the forum. And when putting that slide together, I had a whole slide full of people from all sorts of disciplines, academic, consultants, the sciences, everything. And so that made me realize even back in 2007 that it was being used all over the place by all kinds of folks. And I'm sure there are others that have more interesting stories of how QGIS has been used.
Mm-hmm. When was it now? But we joined OSGeo. Is it 3 years back, or was it more?
2007 we went into incubation and graduated in 2008.
Right. And so I thought it'd be just interesting to ask you your thoughts on, firstly, has it been a worthwhile thing for us to join OSGeo? Maybe I should just explain OSGeo for people who are not aware is an umbrella organization for open source geospatial projects. What is the impact, or what is the significance of being a member of OSGeo for us, or does it have any?
I think it does. You know, OSGeo really, as you said, is an umbrella. It has brought in a number of different open source GIS technologies, and so you know we fit into that in the desktop side. GRASS is also in there. The organization gives us visibility at conferences. We're part of their literature and so forth. Because of OSGeo, we are able to participate in the Google Summer of Code for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, even before we were a graduated project. Because on its own, I really doubt that the QGIS quote organization would be able to be admitted into Google Summer of Code. So we've had several students there that have done some good work for us. So I think it's and of course we've used some of their infrastructure, although we have always been self-supporting in that regard. I think it's been good in that it makes us part of a larger community, an integrated community, and gives us some visibility, and also the other benefits I mentioned.
Um, I want to wrap up, but I just wanted to ask you personally. I know that if I'm allowed to say, we can cut it out if I'm not. But you just retired, and you're still too young to be retired. But um, what are you doing now? I believe you're freelancing, and if people are interested in your services, are you available? And what kind of things are you interested in doing?
I am currently working on a book on QGIS uh, that will be hopefully finished by the first of the year. And I'm working on a revision of a previous book that was called Desktop GIS that included a number of desktop technologies. That's being revised as well. And also, I'm open and available for GIS, QGIS, open source GIS consulting work, and give me something to do other than stare at the snow in the dark in the winter. And I recently had a company for a long time. I recently sort of made some changes to that organization and started a company called GeoApp, GeoApt.com. And there's contact information there on the website if you want to get in touch with me.
Great. So, just to wrap up, are there any parting thoughts you have for the users and developers out there? Anything that a message you'd like to put out there for your 190,000 users, happy users?
Well, first off, I want to say that this project would not be a success without all the people that have worked on it. I founded it. I wrote a fair amount of code early on. There's a lot of my code or bits of it still in there, but without all the people that have come on board and worked so hard on it, it wouldn't be what it is today. It certainly is a community effort. It's not any one person's effort. And so in that regard, I really appreciate all the work that has been done by everyone to make it a success. For the 190,000 or more users, keep using it, contribute. We have, like I said, the website lists ways you can contribute, and we value your input in how we can make it better. And I think the unfortunate reality is people always have more good ideas than we have resources to implement. And so, we have to prioritize those. But I see a good, strong future for QGIS. I don't see it going away. The community base or user base is growing all the time. People that you would not have expected to leave proprietary GIS and come to open source are doing so. And so I think it's got a bright future. And I think as a community works together and we continue to bring in good talent, it's going to be even greater product as we move on down the line.
Right. So I guess just to uh, finish this chat, I would just like to say on behalf of the 190,000 users plus us handful of developers and other community members, thanks very much to you for actually starting QGIS. I remember when I was when I first saw the first release come on Fresh Meat, and I was crazy zealot Linux user, not like yourself. So, and I was looking for something to use on my desktop that I could do GIS with, and I was really excited when the project arrived, and so I'm really grateful for what you started, and I think there are a lot of other people there that would just sort of give a big collective thanks to you for what you've done, and so thanks for taking the time to have a chat to me, and I hope everybody enjoys watching this little interview with you.
All right, go out there and use QGIS.